My history with Nintendo is certainly rocky. Despite growing up with the NES and Super NES, they really lost me with the N64, with Wave Race 64 being literally the only game on the platform that I still regularly go back to. I really didn't like anything Nintendo was doing with their 3D adaptations of long-running 2D franchises. Now, you might be asking, even Zelda? No, especially Zelda. Ocarina of Time's gameplay design would put me off for years because I had gotten so attached to the top-down style of the original, A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening, that watching Link run around the screen like Mario was borderline offensive to me. And Zelda 2 is the obvious elephant in the room, and I eventually came around on it in a big way, but it took some doing to say the least. Things got better from the GameCube on, even if the Fisher-Price-looking controller did make a terrible first impression to my fighting game-focused self. But there were some years I had a reputation, perhaps somewhat justified, of being the iron-fisted Nintendo hater. Now, I wasn't going out of my way to find reasons to bash them, but because I genuinely felt ignored as a customer, I voiced that. I liked Nintendo games. To this day, their output with the NES and Super NES is among my favorite gaming to go to. That things took such a sharp turn with the N64, departures, unnecessary design steps, and no small amount of design homogenization left me feeling alienated. Especially when the PlayStation was serving up fare like Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid that looked and felt just like the games the boxes claimed they were. Nintendo might not have brought me around with the GameCube if not for the fact that they led with a new Wave Race. That's always going to win me over. Around this time, I was on the GameSpot community team, and this reputation was practically made there. It was there that I was put to the question of what I would do instead in Nintendo's position, rather than make the games that they ended up making. At the time, I didn't really have any real-life examples to draw from, so instead I simply said that I would have still implemented the 3D transition, but only in a way that honored each series' established look and feel. Thanks to the Nintendo of today, I can simply say that I would have made Super Mario 3D Land or World and The Legend of Zelda A Link Between Worlds instead of Ocarina of Time as two examples. The fact that I was told at the time that I would run Nintendo into the ground doing that, while these games went on to be the product of one of the most successful versions of Nintendo to date, is a vindicating feeling that's hard to describe. Now, I've been rough on Nintendo lately, justifiably given their track record on digital ownership and long-term online service reliability, but that shouldn't overshadow the fact that the Switch's software output right now is spectacular, especially if you're willing to browse the eShop like some kind of vintage record store looking for treasures. You'll find them. Honestly, the Switch is the only platform today that gets me excited just by loading up its storefront because I never know what great games I'll run across while I'm browsing. Now, I'll be doing a video in the future about 9th Gen's relevancy problem due to the lack of exclusives. Let it be said that Nintendo has no such issue, and if there was still a 90s mentality throughout the gaming industry, there isn't a doubt in my mind that there would be a brutal marketing campaign to twist the knife on this matter. It often feels like Sony and Microsoft are constantly feeding us reasons not to buy into their next-gen systems, though hopefully we're about to turn the corner on that with production issues winding down and likely making platform holders more comfortable with moving on from 8th Gen. Meanwhile, Nintendo Direct is fairly reliable for giving us an E3 quality wave of reveals a few times a year for games that won't be found anywhere else anytime soon. The Switch as a device is unusual in contrast to Nintendo's minimum effort approach to digital sales and ownership. The only moving part on the system is a fan that should be easily replaced by the time it becomes an issue. Physical games are on cards, not discs, so there's no optical media drive that can wear out, no risk of disc rot, and with the exception of Switch Online's retro game selections, there's no online check-in on main consoles locking you out whether we're talking about next week or next decade. Physical games that require online downloads are a problem, but most games are on the card in their entirety, and the ones that aren't have labeling that will tell you clearly what you're signing up for. It's also not a stretch to call this Nintendo's best software lineup since the Super NES. The retail end isn't nearly as deep, but those are just the times we live in. Their first-party studios are in top form. Their unspoken but strongly implied Wii U evacuation program has successfully bolstered the Switch lineup with a host of great games that deserved a larger audience, and third parties are broadly looking at Nintendo's platform as a destination host for RPGs for the first time since the mid-90s. It does take some criticism for being underpowered, but that criticism loses all validity when exclusives enter the discussion. They won't run any better on PlayStation or Xbox because they won't run on them at all. Furthermore, it's been proven that developers will put extra emphasis on enjoyable gameplay experiences when they don't have the hardware muscle to go all in on visuals. Switch is benefiting from this all over the place. And if you want to put your tinfoil hats on for a moment, I suspect this could also be an underlying reason for the Xbox Series S and Microsoft's compatibility mandate. By forcing studios into compatibility with a lower spec, they'll have to make games that wow you in other ways. Now, I'm not going fanboy here. My PlayStations and Xboxes aren't going anywhere because their libraries are just as important as the Switches, they just aren't nearly as prolific. For gamers who weren't around for 4th gen and the cornucopia of great games the Super NES constantly dumped on us, this is kind of what it felt like. For multi-platform gamers, there's a real ebb and flow to your gaming practice. Sometimes you'll gravitate more toward one platform's library than others, and as surprised as I am to say it after everything we've gone through in the last 20 years, right now I'm spending most of my time with Nintendo. Hopefully they can keep this energy up because this really is the best version of them. And that's all for now. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe as it really helps the channel. Until next time, I'm Patrick Mifflin, sounding off.